There's this like advice that you hear all the time from founders and entrepreneurs that don't work with your friends. And I could not disagree more. If you can't have hard conversations on day one with someone and you don't have a built-in respect for each other, it's not going to work.
Graham Douglas is an award-winning creative and founder of the ad agency Gus.
A few years ago, with a dear friend and one of the best creatives I've ever worked with in my life, started a company called Gus that we've been running for, I think we're about to have our 4-year birthday.
It was so much fun looking at what you've done from Droga 5 to now we're doing at Gus. Like truly some tear jerkers.
So I think more than anything, it was like exciting to finally hit on an idea that felt like it might actually make a difference. Those personal projects in my career always have a special place in my heart. Oh man, I mean, everything's different, you know? Like, I mean, I think the biggest difference founding any company, not just an agency or a service business, is
What's up, everybody? My name's Alex Lobert, and welcome to the best job I've ever had. On today's show, I'm talking with Graham Douglas. Graham is the co-founder of the ad agency Gus, which was just named one of Ad Age's best small ad agencies. What amazes me so much about Graham is his ability to turn art into impact. He always chooses to solve or shine a light on real-world problems. One touching example was the Help I've Cut Myself and I Want to Save a Life campaign that was inspired by his twin brother having leukemia. With this campaign, he actually merged a bone marrow donation registry with adhesive bandages to make the process easier. Now, this campaign won a number of awards for its impact and its creativity, including a Cannes Grand Prix for Good. I learned so much from this conversation, especially about how to have a career and a business that, is really successful, but also is filled with joy. Here's Graham Douglas. Graham, welcome to the show.
thanks for having me, Alex.
First question, where's this podcast find you today?
This podcast finds me at home at my apartment in Brooklyn, New York. How about yourself, Alex?
I'm here in Chicago. I'm hiding out in my office here, but I wish I was in Brooklyn. By the way, you have such a cool office in New York, right? Is Gus still, you have a Manhattan office?
Still there, yeah. We took over a tattoo parlor in the Lower East Side during the pandemic, and our office has been there ever since. So we have more of a weird storefront than an office, I would say, but it's where we tend to hang out and get together the most.
Well, that's what, when you're creative, you can like see these opportunities, like a tattoo shop. Like, how could I turn that into office? It looks always really cool. I remember doing some video calls with you all while I was at Spotify, and I was always very jealous.
Come through sometime. Someone's there usually.
Absolutely. Well, this is gonna be a lot of fun. So I want to talk to you for a lot of reasons. So first of all, your career is fascinating. For those that have not looked you up, you've done a bunch of really interesting things, from working at big agencies to small agencies to founding your own agency. You have had some really cool campaigns, some that are like honestly kind of tear jerkers, which we will maybe get into. So I thought it'd be a lot of fun. And, especially someone on the creative side. I feel like I often talk with people who are on the tech side of advertising. And it's really nice to talk to someone on the creative and strategic side of that world. So
excited to do it. I've definitely had a long and windy path to get here. Not a straight line, but I'm excited to give you as much bad advice and and hopefully decent storytelling as I can pull together.
Amazing. Okay, well, let's dive in. All right, first and most important question. Graham, what is the best job that you've ever had?
Okay, I have two answers to this. Is that against the rules?
Absolutely acceptable.
Okay, I'll go in chronological order. Possibly the best job I've ever had is when I was like 18, I think. I managed several snow cone stands in Texas, where I'm from, like the summer after my freshman year of college. And I was like a friend of mine's dad who was a postman. This was his like retirement scheme. So he just hired me and his son to run these snow cone stands. And we just hired a bunch of our friends to work with us all day long. So it was just hanging out with your good buddies, unlimited snow cones in a little air conditioned hut for hours and hours on end for a few months, and minimal responsibility. I would say like enough to make you feel like you were doing something, but mostly it was just chilling. So that was a most excellent job.
That's so good. I actually think it's always a great reminder that jobs like that can be great, especially at a point in time. Like you've won awards, Graham. If I'm not mistaken, Gus
Snow
got
cone
like
awards.
right, like snow cone awards, But at the same time, there are these jobs at this moment that not only are they fun, but I actually, I suspect, and I'd love your take on this. Like, what did you learn in that job? Do you think that actually was foundational for your career in some way?
Totally. It's a great question. In a way, it was one of the first sort of like service jobs I ever had. And okay, for the record, I'm a firm believer that everybody should have to, by requirement, wait tables and work in retail at some point. Because I feel like you learn like half the life skills that you need to do any job after that if you just learn how to wait tables or bartender and just help people in a retail environment. And like in a way that I think the snow cone stand was kind of the first time I was ever in service, like we had a line of people who needed something and most of them had random requests and curveballs. You'd think that 50 different snow cone flavors would be enough to satisfy most people, but like I'd say half of the orders we got were like, can you do this? What about this? Can I cut this part out and do this instead? So it was like, weirdly enough, in a way, a lot of what I deal with on a daily basis now, like having to figure out how to like, get service a client of some kind, even if it's for a $2 snow cone stand in 30 seconds or, multi-year relationship with a client we have now.
Right. And so obviously the service aspect is like so transferable. And I think it's very powerful to get that experience early and learn you can do it. Right. So not quite service in that way, but I actually taught tennis when I was in high school. I was a big tennis player growing up. And gosh, I remember having to like teach junior high and younger kids how to play tennis, especially like the really young kids. And you're like, if I can do this, I can do anything, right? Like
for sure.
I think that there's that confidence that it gives you and also just interacting with other people. I feel like getting that practice of being professional and like learning to manage situations is very powerful.
You're finding me at one of the first times in my adult life that I'm not teaching something. Like I've always been like an adjunct or a guest professor or a lecturer or something, and just unfortunately I've gotten like a little bit too busy at the moment. But I couldn't agree more. The best way to learn is to teach. I think no matter what the subject is, it's such a boot camp.
So you said there were two.
Oh, yes.
The first is snow cones. I'm assuming, and then, if I'm not mistaken, you went to North Texas. Went to Miami School of Advertising, School of Ads.
Yeah, I had a cup of coffee at Miami Ad School. I was there for about six or 8 months or so, and then sort of jumped into a career in whatever this industry is that we're in now. But yeah, I guess I would say I think the other best job I've had is the one I have now, which is like a really fortunate thing to say. I don't know too many people who could say that. So I feel really blessed. I guess I should tell you, a few years ago with a dear friend and one of the best creatives I've ever worked with in my life started a company called Gus that we've been running for, I think we're about to have our 4-year birthday this summer sometimes. It's been amazing. I mean, super hard to start something from zero and, grow a team, grow a brand, figure out how to run a business and all those things. But There's something really rewarding about, you know, building something from nothing and growing a team and instilling a culture and defining a point of view on the world in a way I've never had to before. So, uh, I'm loving what we're doing.
Tell me about Gus. It is, I think, a really interesting business. So you are a creative agency, but not just. I feel like and also I feel like you have a penchant for like a little bit irreverent, a little bit fun, but also like heartstring type thinking. So yeah, tell me a little bit
Yeah,
about Gus and what you all do.
you're absolutely right. Like we are both me and my co-founder partner Spencer are creatives by trade. But I think both of us could have been strategists in a different life. I think we've always loved the kinds of projects that are business transformation, that are answering fundamental questions about an organization, why they should exist and who they're for, and some of those things that often fall into a strategy line item in a scope of work. But we've also, as creatives at heart, always felt like the best strategy in the world, if it doesn't turn the corner into something that hits, something that is a hook, something that you could uh, write on the wall in your office and have everyone come in and know how to do their job better, whether they're making copies or the CEO, then the strategy's not there yet. And so in a way, that's what we do at Gus. We call it a creative strategy company, and we're at our best when we're helping organizations figure out that true North Star, not just a campaign or or a brand, but like really what is the thing? What are we here to accomplish? Um, and then from there, we've been makers our whole lives, so we're pretty good at and get very excited about bringing that to life in all kinds of different channels.
So what was it that you made Gus, right? You wanted to found
Hmm.
your own agency. What did you see? What did you think the gap was that Gus could solve that, Droga and all these other places couldn't?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think we're still answering it, but gun to my head, I think it's that tension that we felt around the fact that strategy has never been more important when you can have a TikTok shop or a Shopify in 5 minutes and be a brand. You really have to understand what makes you different and why you deserve people's attention. But the traditional process of arriving at a strategy is philosophical and time consuming, and oftentimes the output of that is 100 pages of charts and arrows and pyramids and houses and pillars. And I just can't tell you how many times that me as a creative, or me as I've been on the other side of the aisle quite a bit too. I've been the client a number of times. I can tell how many times I've sat with my creative team or with my C-level team on the brand side and gone and heard, well, like what floor of the house are we looking at? What is the singular idea? Um, and oftentimes that is quote unquote creative. Figuring out how to say it in a sentence and what the hook is creative. And I think the white space we felt was just like, these two things should not be separate disciplines. These should not be siloed practices that don't overlap. We have to smash these things together if we want to truly build differentiated brands at pace and at scale in the 2000s.
The strategy for your company and your marketing have to be not just
Absolutely.
aligned, they must be, connected. Otherwise, I feel like that's often where, businesses get in trouble.
Yeah.
What they're communicating compared to what they are at their core does not align, and people are too smart. That is so, like, people see that from a mile away, right?
Totally. I always end up saying the best businesses are ideas, not the best brands, not the best campaigns, but the companies that we look at and like fawn over these days are the ones that are a very clear, simple idea. And that's not how most business plans are written. And it's certainly not how most multi-level, multi-touch, multi-tiered marketing plans are written. So yeah, we found it to be like integral to the success of the work that we do to really help a business figure out like, man, what's the big idea at the core of this company?
So what's unique about having your own agency compared to, right? You worked in a number of agencies that other people founded.
True.
What's been different for you? What's been fun? What hasn't been fun?
Man, I mean, everything's different, like, and I'm sure if you asked a creative on our team, they would have different answers than me or my partner. But I mean, I think the biggest difference founding any company, not just an agency or a service business, is um, every problem is your problem. I think especially as creatives and as marketers, you get trained up in how to become laser focused on solving a problem, right? And I mean, I remember earlier in my career, I used to sit and close the door in a room and stare at the wall for days and days, if not weeks, trying to solve a very specific problem. As soon as you start your own company, that problem's your problem, along with who's doing payroll and the sync's broken, you know, someone's misquoting us over here, and like all the things that you never have to think about because it's in most businesses' best interest to keep you away from that stuff so you can focus on the other problems. So I would say that's the biggest change or the biggest difference is you have suddenly have inherited every problem under your roof.
So do you actually miss, right? So staring at the wall, figuring out the creative problem, do you miss having, or rather, actually, I made an assumption.
Mm-hmm.
Is that a smaller part of your job now that you are running this business and payroll is also on your also on your task list? And
Yeah,
if it is smaller, do you miss that? Like, how do you feel about that shift?
it's a smaller part, but it's definitely a part of my job description still. I think when when Spencer and I talk about what the future looks like, one of the kind of restrictors that we put on the business is like we want to be able to touch all of the work that we're doing. I think at the end of the day, I'm still just a creative person who gets their jollies from cracking a big idea, and I think our work is better because the founders of the company are highly involved in it. And so I don't have any ambitions of having 1,000-person company where I don't know everyone's name and have no idea what everyone's working on. I really still have, we continue to prioritize making sure that we are on the tools, maybe not every second of the day, but for a considerable amount of our time.
You know what? I think that's killer. Don't get me wrong. Big is cool too. Like if that's your aspiration, like to run a
Big is very
10,000
cool.
per, right. Big could be
No,
great.
no shade thrown. I'm incredibly respectful of and envious of folks who can grow a company like ours to thousands of people. It's incredibly difficult to do that.
Right. But almost by definition, if that is what you're after, you will not be doing what you're doing. Right. You cannot be in the development of cracking that idea or cracking that idea if you're running the 10,000 person organization. And I think there's some magic in that. And I think in just understanding, by the way, that you want that from your career, because I think I'd be curious if you feel the same way. The push culturally, I think often is just to grow it, right? It's just make it bigger. And then you like look at people who they did it, right? You're clearly a great business person, Graham. And it's like, oh, now I've got a 1,000-person organization, and they're like, I'm miserable. Like I want, and then they're like, I need to start over, right? I need to go do another small agency to get that rush again.
Yeah, I do think the tides on that are turning though. There's obviously a million business cases to make for scaling a company as fast as possible, but I don't think that that's a long-term strategy anymore. I think with the decentralization of a lot of what we do and AI and all the things, I think small is a secret weapon. Like I love having the ability to say yes to everything that we should say yes to. And I also equally love being able to say no to all the things that we should be saying no to. And at a certain point, if you have enough headcount and enough overhead and enough, people depending on you for their livelihood, you got to start saying yes to a lot more stuff that might, you know, be a conflict in some way.
Right. No, that's actually a really good point that I hadn't thought about. Like lower overhead allows you to, in many ways, do the things you want to do.
Totally. There's a reason our office is a tattoo parlor. It's
Right.
We don't have 4 floors in Midtown somewhere that we're paying the overhead on. It forces us to keep things small and agile and flexible and only invite the best people to work with us instead of throwing bodies at a problem, like I think a lot of businesses tend to do.
I think that's so smart. So you've mentioned Spencer a couple times.
Mm-hmm.
How did you decide him, or how did he decide you? Like, how did you two come together? I feel like your co-founder is so important in any business.
Critical. I would never start a company without a really, really, really solid partner. Um, no, our origin story is pretty interesting, actually. So we have known each other for a very long time. We worked together at an agency called Droga 5 when it was in its infancy. It's now one of those many thousands of person kind of companies. Um, and like I was saying earlier, I think a shared, a kindred spirit in a lot of ways as a could have been a strategist, kind of creative or business problem solver at heart. We just gravitated to a lot of the same kinds of work together, and stayed friends and stayed close for many years after we both parted ways. And I found myself as being the client a few years ago at a company called Vimeo. And I joined that business because they were undertaking a huge pivot, which required a massive rebrand. And unbeknownst to me at the time, it required that kind of thinking that we later called creative strategy at Gus. Like we needed to pivot a company quickly, succinctly, make it very clear what our point of differentiation was. And I only knew one other person that thought like that, and it was Spencer. So I ended up calling Spencer, and we became agency and client. We hired the agency that Spencer was working for, and they built a team around him to work directly with us. And longtime colleagues and friends became client and agency, which is traditionally like a tense relationship. It can be quite combative. It can be quite, uh, you know, spiky. And I think because we had this like mutual respect and built-in relationship already, it planted a lot of the seeds for like not just, hey, this thing that we do is unique, but also this way that we work together is unique and something that we should instill into every relationship that we have with every partner going forward. So the origin story of Gus is basically Spencer and I working together as agency and client on a project, and then both looking up and going, we could probably quit our jobs and do this instead.
Like, this is fun. Actually, I think it's such an important dynamic, just the relationship aspect of work. Right. Yeah. Clearly it sounds like you're doing great work. And like part of it was you were thinking in a similar way. You worked well together. You could create like magic that drove business results. But it also sounds like you two just enjoyed each other. And I'm such a strong believer of if you're going to spend 8 and starting your own business, like, let's be honest, way more than 8, I'm sure, hours building this thing, you had better like that person. I always joke that if my best friend and I started a company, like, I don't care, we could be janitors, like whatever, like I don't care what we're doing, like we will probably have fun and enjoy it. So I don't know, like,
couldn't agree more.
Yeah,
there's this like advice that you hear all the time from founders and entrepreneurs that don't work with your friends, and I could not disagree more. Like if you can't have hard conversations on day one with someone and you don't have a built-in respect for each other, it's not going to work. You don't have to be best friends, but you've got to be able to have a deep, respectful relationship with each other from the jump. Otherwise, you are probably pretty fucked.
Right. And I don't think you need to be best friends. However, honestly, I think it kind of helps.
You could.
Like, I really do. Like I would totally take the, contrary opinion to that advice.
Yeah. The deeper the friendship, the better, I think.
So I'm curious. Obviously, Gus has been around for 4 years. You all, if I'm not mistaken, is it 2024? You were one of the small agencies of the year.
That's right.
Congratulations.
Thank you, man.
Are there any campaigns or projects where you look at it right now and you go, that was cool, I like that?
I don't know. I feel really fortunate that we don't have a whole lot of like sweep it under the rug kind of work, which is I think by design. So yeah, there's a lot of things I'm excited about, and I mean a couple of recent ones we've we've been working with the folks at the Harry's organization, for a number of years, and in a lot of different capacities, and I've gotten to know Jeff and Andy, the founders there, quite well. Um, and we actually just saw the culmination of several years' work come out into the world as a new holding company that sits above all of the brands within the Harry's portfolio that we helped sort of crack the ethos, the reason for being, the position, and also named it. And it just launched like 2 weeks ago. So that's been a fun one. Keep an eye out for Mammoth Brands, the latest packaged goods juggernaut to hit the
Shout
scene.
out.
Yeah, they're wonderful. They're gonna kill it.
That's so cool. And it is, again, you've kind of talked about this luxury position that you can work with so many brands that you find inspiring and that you can be connected to all the work and you're like, oh, that's fun. So I love it. And so one more question on this thread. You mentioned it a little bit that while you're not trying to be a 10,000 person company, I guess, what do you like? What's the future? Do you have like any visions for where you want this to go?
Philosophical
That you're willing to
visions.
share. That you're willing to share the secret plans.
Yes. No, I mean, I think we have philosophical visions. I don't think, at the same time, I don't think there's a blueprint or a number or, you know, something like that that gets me out of bed in the morning. I think we want to continue to work with brands that create real impact in the world, and where our secret powers can have more impact in helping them do that. Um, I want to continue to do disruptive work that doesn't look like anything you've seen before, and want to keep working with the absolute best people in the world to do it. And I think if we could tick those three boxes, I don't care if we look up in 10 years and there's 12 of us or 1,200 of us, I would be thrilled either way.
How about we pause for a second and we can move on to the next segment? Crossroads. Was there a decision or moment in your career that you think was pivotal to getting you where you are today?
A lot of them is the honest answer. I think I tried to make a habit out of taking the leap every time it presented itself, looking for the uncomfortable instead of looking for the comfortable. But I think there probably was one moment that was the biggest pivot for me. I mentioned this earlier, but I spent the earlier part of my career on the agency side and then left to consult and spend a lot more time on the brand side, and finally did end up joining the team at Vimeo. And fantastic leadership team, awesome company that I felt really fortunate to be a part of. But I think it also just opened my eyes up a ton to how the other half lives, like seeing the inner workings of a massive technology company is eye-opening. And there's no amount of briefs or onboarding documents or things like that you get on the agency side that can really do the same thing as actually exposing yourself to what it is to run a business day in and day out at that scale. So I think that's helped me be a much better creative. It certainly helped us be a much better agency partner to our companies that are our partners. And I would encourage anyone who's on either of those sides to make that leap at some point, because I think you'll just gain a ton of empathy and experience for how your partners live and what they need to be successful.
How did you get that job? Yeah, like what, like, so, right, because you went from agency to Vimeo, correct?
I went from agency to consulting and ended up working at a lot of tech companies for whatever reason. Found myself at Spotify, at Google, at Oscar Insurance. And I think that experience ended up leading me to someone at Vimeo. I don't know who got my name first, but had some conversations with them. And to be honest, I took the interview because I thought it could be a good freelance gig. Like I thought it might be a good consulting gig, like, cool, I'll take the meeting. And just was fascinated by the problem, and the more conversations I had with him, the more time I spent with the CEO and CMO, the more I just was thrilled to be a part of a big pivot like the one that they were about to undertake.
Yeah, actually, I do have one question there. Like, how did you think about the creative challenge, right? The challenge that you could solve for them as
Hmm.
a strategist for Vimeo.
Yeah, it's a good question. I thought I was like kind of uniquely positioned to be a guide for them. Like the Vimeo that I grew up with was this beautiful sort of collection of weirdos and art nerds and film heads, and it was always one of the places I went to get inspired when I was, early on in my career. But in the background, the whole time they were building this true service for anyone who wants to do anything with video. I also found myself on that side of the, you know, audience segmentation, if you will, like we were sharing editorial links all the time. My own personal website had embedded videos. I was editing things all the time. So I became a sort of user of the technology as much as a fanboy of the art that was on there. And my big mission there was to help them position the company for a much, much, much bigger audience without losing soul and the heart that any of their competitors would love to have as one of their, part of their DNA.
That's a cool problem. That's a cool way to be able to
Yeah.
help that company.
It's really fun.
All right, we'll pause here again and move on to our last segment. A message to a future traveler. Graham, what's one piece of advice that you would give to people searching for their best job?
Okay, this may sound like dumb advice, but write it down. Like, what is your best job? What does it look like? What does success look like? I think so many people who are looking for a job, especially for those listening that are early on in their career, a job is the goal, right? And like, man, the right job can look so different than a job. Like, what does culture look like for you? Where is that job located? What kind of work is that place? Will your job be on the day to day? What are you prioritizing? Do you want mentorship or do you want to build something, on your own? Do you care about culture or do you care about your output? Like, I think just giving yourself a cheat sheet of objective, like, descriptors, measures of success for what that perfect job looks like will help you when you actually have an offer sitting in front of you, evaluate, is this the one, or am I clouded by the excitement of getting a job offer?
I always love the Alice in Wonderland quote, who I always forget who said it, but if you don't know where you're going, any road will take you there.
Yeah, exactly right.
Right. And so I think that is such good advice to actually crystallize what the best job is. That's the only way you can go find it.
Yeah, it helps you in the search too. Like, don't shotgun approach applying to 1,000 different jobs. Spend all of your time on the 4 jobs that you think are the ones for you. Beat down every door. Find every person who works there that you think you can get in front of, and go get that job that's the perfect job, instead of just waiting around for a job to come around.
Absolutely. Well, Graham, I think you're going to have a lot of people, I'm sure you already do, beating down your door to work with you and Gus. And I'm not sure if you wrote it down, but you clearly have created something really cool. And just like really throughout your career. I talked about this at the beginning, was so much fun looking at what you've done from your time early to Droga 5 to now we're doing it Gus. Like, truly some tearjerkers. Go look at the Prudential Day One campaign. I told you right before this, I watched some of those videos and truly like welled up a little bit. I'm like, oh my God, I'm a personal finance nerd, but like seeing like the human stories behind retirement, like, so cool. So thank you so much. This was like a ton of fun. And if people want to find you, I assume they can like go to your website, check out your profile.
We're there on the internet, gus.biz, and you can find us on LinkedIn and Instagram and all the places that companies live.
Amazing. Well, Graham, this is so much fun. Thank you so much.
Likewise, man. Really appreciate you having me on.
Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this podcast, send it to a friend and give us a follow. We're looking forward to making more of the best job I've ever had. Right. So you did the Help I Wanted to Save a Life campaign for your brother. What did he think about it?
Well, I think he thought it was pretty cool. It's one of those things that I'm sure we all have in the back of our heads where it's a problem that I tried to help solve in some way for 10 years, ever since I kind of got introduced to the world of bone marrow registrations and bone marrow transplants and things like that. So I think more than anything, it was like exciting to finally hit on an idea that felt like it might actually make a difference. And so those personal projects in my career always have like a special tint to them, like a special place in my heart. And that one certainly does.
Yeah. When your work can change the life of your family, that's pretty special.
Absolutely.